There it goes.
Okay, we are now recording and live with our February Office Hours webinar. As I was telling Adam, we're just going to go ahead and move through our presentation on speed tests and pitfalls. We don't really have any visitors yet this morning, but we'll see if anyone shows up for the Q&A section. Otherwise, this will just be a short one today. So, speed testing and the pitfalls thereof. So first of all, let's talk about some of the more popular speed tests. And I ran a few tests here on pause with a few of those. GT Metrics, Pingdom website speed test, and Pagespeed Insights. That is interesting. I wonder if I got my tests mixed up. Might have still been Oh, yeah, I forgot to clear the cache. I was expecting crap for results there, and I didn't get it because I didn't clear the cache.
Oops. Well, we can redo it. Yeah.
Yep, we can do that. Clear URL cache. And in fact, that's right. I was going to actually disable the cache entirely for that test.
Might not be bad to keep the old test there up, and then we can do a
I will. I've got
Okay.
the other three, so we're going to just kick these off. So when we're talking about speed tests, the most common one that we see is Pagespeed Insights that people talk about. We usually recommend GT Metrics, but then, of course, we see some folks using the Pingdom test, although it's not as detailed. I would guess, Adam, we probably still see people using webpagetest.org.
Very rarely, but yes,
very rarely, but still a few.
Maybe one a month.
And there's a few others out there. Any others that you can think of?
No, I mean, these are definitely the highest three.
Those are the top three, kind of. And even the Pingdom one probably has trailed off some popularity, I would think.
Yep. And usually we, again, like you say, we usually will point to one of these and say, let's just have a look at this. So we're looking at consistent and
and so it's, we're familiar with what's on there instead of going, trying to learn a new test and figure out what in the world they're talking about, which a lot of times they're using, if they're using Lighthouse from Google, they're using similar terminology. But anyway, so those are the common tests. And, right now, about a 74, which is honestly not terrible, but it's a really lightweight page. It's just this sample page with an image and some text, a couple more images. Me from 100 years ago wearing a silly shirt with my guinea pig trying to type. Don't have guinea pigs anymore. But this actually works good because it highlights one of the things that I wanted to talk about. So one of the biggest pitfalls, before I get to that, though, is getting into this mindset that, I got to get 100 because this scale is a 0 to 100 scale. 0 through 49 they claim is bad, and 50 to 89 is decent, and you should be going for 90 to 100. And some people will even get 93 and they'll be like, well, I want to get 100. Stop. Just don't. Just don't do that. Trying to get 100 or even rerunning speed tests and trying to solve all the issues, that's a good way to waste days and days of your life. And it's not going to be worth it. I promise. So that's the first thing to watch out for. Don't be trying to get 100, and don't obsess with trying to hit every little thing on the speed test, because sometimes they're just not very important things that they're recommending. In this case, though, we've got defer off-screen images, so they want us to lazy load. They want us to properly size our images or scale them down for the browser size, or because in this case it's a mobile device, so it's a much smaller screen. And then they want us to serve those images in next-gen formats and reduce unused CSS, which I'll talk about here later a tiny bit. But several of these are image related, so that's great. And all of these can be resolved with our plugin, and so that's great as well. But one of the things we can get in trouble with is one that's not shown here, and I wonder if they still even show that test anymore. Let's just double check real quick. There used to be one for efficiently encoding images, and I don't see that one anymore.
I think I've seen that lately.
Oh, there it is. Efficiently encode images.
Yeah, it doesn't generally come up anymore.
No. And part of that is, I think, because people are focusing more on WebP, and so, if they got their images in WebP, that's not even an issue from the start. But there could be some issues there. And I think somewhat they've fine-tuned that a little bit more. So a little back history. They used to do strictly lossless compression on their speed tests on Pagespeed Insights and on GTmetrix. And pretty much everyone except for webpagetest.org who used quality 50, they were all doing lossless encoding. And then Google decided, you know what, there's some really good lossy algorithms out there. We should start pushing people to, make their images even leaner. And so they did. And that caused this issue that we still run into even with some of the WebP stuff, where they're recompressing an already compressed image to see if it's been compressed. And that leads to this whole circular loop where their tool might compress an image further, in fact probably will, and if it compresses it too much, it'll throw a false positive and go, hey, you didn't compress your image. Well, yeah, we did, but you just recompressed it a buttload more, and yeah,
right.
Not going to be great quality. But
I was going to say, it doesn't discuss quality.
it. I mean, you can recompress an image 50 times and keep saving a couple bytes every time. A lot of times, so that's a really sticky thing to get into, and that was a pitfall early on. Again, they've added in kind of a buffer or a threshold there now where, excuse me, they'll recompress that image, and then, if it's within 5% or whatever it is, they won't alert on that one. So, oh, well, it's close enough. We think you already did it. And this is just a false positive, so we're going to ignore it.
Okay.
So that leads into this thing with serving images in next-gen formats that we talked about a month or two ago. So if your images are in WebP, they will just not show this warning at all. But if you have any that aren't, and none of these are on this page yet, because I didn't have our plugin running or anything, so lost my train of thought. So yeah, if they're in WebP, it just, disables the warning. But they're also looking in this recommendation for the potential to convert images to a newer format called AVIF, which is supported by about half of the browsers out there. And it can save even more than WebP. But the trouble with the AVIF testing is that they don't actually test AVIF compression. They estimate it. So if your images aren't in WebP, you're going to get this crazy recommendation for AVIF that says, oh yeah, you can save a huge amount. And you may be able to with AVIF. We don't yet support that. They talk about that here, WebP and AVIF. We do WebP right now. AVIF is still a little bit of a circus in getting support, but we're working on it. Anyway, that's one thing to be very aware of with this, is that if our compression beats out WebP, and so thus you have a JPEG, they're going to estimate that you should be able to save even more with AVIF no matter what, just across the board. They're going to assume that AVIF is smaller and tell you that you should serve your images in next-gen formats, even if our compression already beat out WebP. So there's that issue to watch out for. There's also what we've seen with ping images, an issue where, again, if our compression beats out WebP and you don't end up with a WebP image, especially on pings, because we only do lossless WebP on pings, because WebP doesn't do that great. Our lossy compressor is a lot better than WebP on those, especially for images that really should be in the ping format. It tends to beat it out more often. So that's something to watch out for. So what they'll do, they say, oh, it's a ping, so let's recompress it as a WebP. Except we already tried that and WebP lost. So that's what you got to watch out for, is they're recompressing an already compressed image in WebP in lossy mode to get that extra savings. And so that's not what you want for quality. You don't want to be recompressing a compressed version of a compressed image. That's just crazy, especially with a ping. The whole point of a ping is to be lossless or very near to that. And so quality is super important with pings. Sharp edges are really important with pings. And WebP lossy compression does not do well at all with those sharp edges and text and that kind of thing. So hopefully that all made sense. Does that make sense, Adam? Okay.
That made sense.
Let's see. Let me check my notes. Oh, and then I think I got sidetracked. The first thing I wanted to mention before all of that is also that when you're trying to chase that perfect score, you have to remember that the internet is variable. It gets congested. There, you get delays in there and latency, and you might run Pagespeed Insights 10 times and get a different score every single time. And so you really got to look at the recommendations and see if there's something that you can implement. There might be a plugin for that. We have plugins for most of them between Swiss and our image optimizer, but don't obsess over stuff that you don't know how to fix or that you can't figure out in pretty short order. Unless it's like one of these huge things, and then you might go, okay, I'm going to do some research. If it's going to save you 4 seconds, okay, let's check that out and find out how we can fix that. But, if it's 0.15 seconds and you're like, how in the world do I do that? Yeah, maybe not worth worrying about too much.
Right. Well, I think if I can just interject
go ahead.
A quick note here, too. I think it's important to note what these tests are testing. All of them call themselves a speed test, and they are testing various speeds for various different things, but they're doing that through their systems. And so, for example, Pagespeed Insight is saying, here's how well your tests compare to what we would consider the ideal, or what we think, people should be doing. But that's their ideas of what people should be doing. One of the things that I often recommend to people is you go to your website, you have a look at your website. How does it look to you, and how does it feel to you? Because a speed test site might tell you all kinds of weird things that don't really pertain to how well your site is actually doing. If it looks good, maybe be okay with that. And then, if there are some, like Shane was saying, if there are some glaring things that are coming up, you could save, 4 seconds here. Yeah, let's look at that. Send us a message. We're more than happy to talk to you about what that's saying and what that's doing and even how to fix it. But don't make that the end all be all of everything.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. I tend to push back a lot on that, where like, let's run a real world test and see how it's actually doing. And so that's one of the other things that I wanted to mention, that this is a simulation. As you can see right here, this is not a real mobile phone. It's an emulated Moto G4 with Lighthouse 9. And slow 4G throttling is, again, simulated.
Mm-hmm.
So none of this is real world. This is all lab. This is all done on a server that doesn't even have a screen. So everything they're doing has to be simulated. Now, there is the possibility that they might have some real world data for your site if you get enough traffic. But you really have to have quite a bit of traffic to actually have data in the user experience report. So that can be helpful as a snapshot of what your users are actually seeing. There's some other tools that can help you with that as well, like New Relic application performance monitoring or browser monitoring. Browser Insights maybe is what they call it. I can't remember. We used it once upon a time, and it's kind of slick for seeing what your users are actually seeing for performance out of your site. So that can be a cool way of seeing real world performance. But again, this is all simulated. They are, in this particular case, they're slowing down their server to a certain amount to simulate a mobile device, and they're throttling the network to a certain amount of throughput. And that throughput number that's displayed there may not even actually be what they're doing. Because if you do a little bit of digging online, you'll find out that you can't even get exactly the same numbers in your browser as what they have on the test here without fiddling around with numbers and making them different from what they show here. So it's really weird. But anyway, they're trying to simulate it best they can to give you an idea of, and really this is like worst case mobile device, worst case mobile connection. I mean, I'm sure there are worse connections out there than this, but this is pretty slow, pretty sluggish. So, and they even recently updated this, I believe, because it used to be 3G throttling. So they've even bumped that up a little bit, but it used to be even worse, that it was just like they're testing the bottom of the barrel. So if you can get fast on the PageSpeed Insights mobile test, holy smokes, your page should fly on everything. So that is one thing where it's a really good idea just to do a real world test on your phone. Just pull it up, make sure you're not on Wi-Fi, so you at least are running off, cell tower. See how it feels. And so, yeah, that's definitely something to check. And have some friends test it. You know, go talk to real people and have them do real testing. So, let's see. So we talked about estimation. And Adam touched on something that I was going to mention as well, and I'll just reiterate that you can have a poor score on PageSpeed Insights or GT Metrics and still actually have a fast site. You can also have a really good score on PageSpeed Insights and have a crap slow site. So you got to be careful with that. There are ways to cheat the scores that some developers will use that don't actually make your site any faster. They might make it appear faster, but they still use the same amount of bandwidth, and they end up being more sluggish in real-world user experience. An example of that is just delaying all JavaScript. Not just deferring it, but actually making it so that it doesn't even load until the user starts scrolling or interacting with the page. And if you still have a lot of JavaScript on your page and haven't solved the underlying issues, you'll end up with, as soon as they start to scroll, all the JavaScript has to be downloaded, and that's going to start hammering the processor on that browser or that device that the user is using, and it's going to start getting sluggish, and that's going to end up with a poor user experience, even though the speed tests go, oh, yeah, you're awesome because you delayed all JavaScript, and that was awesome and amazing. Well, no, it was awesome and amazing for the bot, but not for the real people.
Right.
So that's something you have to be super careful with and use in moderation. You certainly can delay some JavaScript, but be careful delaying too much. And definitely, if you got 0.5 mega JavaScript on your page or like 50 JavaScript files, don't just delay that and call it a day. Clean that up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
All right. I wanted to pull this up earlier. I'm going to try and find it. I had an article a while back, and they said this really well, and I thought that was amazing. I don't know if it was one of their recent articles. Let's do this. Yeah, I think this might have been it. How to properly run a website speed test. You're doing it wrong. And there's a very good possibility of that. Oh, that's one of the things to watch out for too. So especially if you're using a CDN like our EasyIO system, your files are going to be delivered from different servers in different locations. And with us using Bunny CDN, they've got, I think, 70 some locations now. And if you're using Google's Pagespeed Insights, you don't know where they're testing from.
Mm-hmm.
And they might test from the same spot every time, but they might not. There's a very good possibility that they're testing from a different server and possibly even a different location. They've got hundreds and probably thousands of servers, and getting that to line up can be really tricky. And so that's just one of the reasons that we use GT Metrics for our testing, is that it lets you choose the location. So by default, it's that Vancouver location because they're from Canada. But you can choose, locations in the U.S. and Europe. So yeah, it lets you specify that, hey, test it from this spot every time, and that way you run it 3-4 times, and and you're going to get the CDN cache warmed up, and then you'll have the ideal results. You'll see what it looks like at full speed, basically, is the point. Whereas with a CDN, if you just test it with an uncached result every time from multiple servers, with Pagespeed Insights and network latency and everything else factored in there, yeah, it could be kind of crazy. So definitely watch out for that if you do insist on using Pagespeed Insights. And I'm not seeing what I was looking for on here, but they said it really well somewhere. You can check this article out. Maybe it's in there somewhere. Might be one of their other articles. But basically, again, look at the recommendations that it's telling you and dig into what that means for your site, and don't just go trying to check off boxes. Yeah. And don't assume that when you fix something that it's going to disappear from the speed test, because it doesn't always. Right. Should in a perfect world, but it doesn't always. So, and if you're unsure, shoot us an email and we'll check things out and see if there's something that's being missed. There can be issues with CSS background issues. Sometimes those can't be lazy loaded, or sometimes, they're not going through our EasyIO CDN properly. Whatever it might be, we can certainly take a look at the results that you're seeing. If at all possible, run a GT Metrics test. Run it. If you're using EasyIO, run it 3-4 times, and then send us the report link, like this guy right here. That way we can see exactly what you're seeing, and not have to guess at what it might be. And then we can literally go in and see every single item that you are seeing during your test. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Adam?
Well, I think you've said it really well. I mean, again, the best thing that we all generally will probably get from these testing sites are their recommendations, like such as, hey, it looks like you need to use next gen image formats. Oh, that means, okay, I need to get some WebP images displayed on my site. So just, to emphasize, just look at the recommendations, I think. What are they saying to be improved? Because the numbers really don't mean much. That, 70, that 30, that 100, those numbers are they don't really tell us anything.
They're totally arbitrary.
Right.
They should, represent a faster site, but they don't always.
No.
Yeah. So, and I didn't even realize I was scrolling through one of their, main points here is on Kinsta was the location matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a chance, go and read through that, especially if you're using EasyIO. They break that down really well on why testing with a CDN, you got to have the same location every time and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And we have similar docs on our site in regards to the CDN as well. But yeah, that's definitely an important consideration.
Mm-hmm.
That probably was the article. I just wasn't seeing the bit that I was looking for. But yeah.
All right.
So we didn't have any other people show up this morning, so with that we will call it a wrap.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Shane, for sharing your wisdom once again.
Mm-hmm. And if you guys have any questions after watching this, you can ask in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble, or just shoot us an email, support@ewww.io, and we'll be happy to give you a hand.
Mm-hmm.